Teddy Roosevelt poses alongside horse wearing cowboy outfit. He was on a visit to the Badlands of Dakota after the death of his first wife in 1885. Roosevelt perceived McKinley as a flip-flopper. Awkwardly, he became McKinley's vice president 2 years later. And just a few months later, he succeeded to the presidency after McKinley was assassinated. Daughters of Cheyenne, Chief American Horse, 1901, Billings, Montana. The girls in cloth dresses and shawls stand beside a pine tree. One girl faces the other, who looks directly at the camera. Rarely did photographers make it to frontier families, but when they did, families wanted to show how well they were doing out west by stripping the house and pose for the camera. This family would like you to see their big melons are and a cow that appears to be able to climb your house. Portrait of Bull Half-White, aka Curly, a Crow Scout for General George Armstrong Custer in traditional dress and hairstyle. He watched the Battle of Little Bighorn from a distance, then went to report the defeat and massacre. On June 2, 1899, a Union Pacific train was flagged down before it could cross a wooden bridge. Armed men forced the train crew to separate the locomotive from the carriages. Once the unattached locomotive had been driven across the bridge was destroyed with dynamite. A safe in one of the carriages was blown open by dynamite, and the robbers escaped with cash and other valuables. The robbery was later traced to Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch. A grim scene of the outlaw John Shaw removed from his coffin and propped up against a picket fence for one last drink of whiskey with his killers. The photo was taken on April 8, 1905. This was after the infamous Canyon Diablo shootout, Arizona. Leader of the Sundance, circa 1908. This may be history's finest portrait of any Sundance participant. An unidentified northern Cheyenne in southeastern Montana was adorned with body paint and wreaths for the Sundance. The event celebrated the continuity of life, a cycle of apparent deaths and rebirths without true death. Harry Campbell, Matador Cowboy, cutting the hair of George Patullo, writer in front of the door of their line camp, half dugout. Matador Ranch, Texas, 1908. Cattle Annie and Little Britches in 1895. Horse thieves and sold alcohol to natives. They may have failed as outlaws. They were fully embraced by both the American press and Hollywood, resulting in a tangled melange of truth and fantasy that is almost impossible to separate 120 years later. Texas cowboy with beat-it-all case, Southern Plains Indian, either Kiowa or Comanche, boots with spurs, knife and revolver, thermoplastic case with scroll motif, circa 1870. He poses in this unusual way to show off the boots, gun, and knife. John Liver-Eating Johnson. In 1847, his wife, a member of the Flathead N.A. tribe, was killed by a Crow brave, which prompted Johnson to embark on a vendetta against the tribe. He killed and scalped more than 300 Crow Indians and devoured their livers to avenge the death of his wife. The Bob Saloon in Jordan, Montana, circa 1904. The cowboys in this L.A. Huffman photo are enjoying a lazy day off. The horse, on the other hand, looks ready to go. Log building with large sign with a portrait of an African-American man and an advertisement for Golden Grain Belt Beers. President Abraham Lincoln, flanked by Major Allen Pinkerton of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency and General John A. McClernand, visits the Union camp at Sharpsburg, Maryland in October 1862, a few weeks after the Battle of Antietam. Wounded Knee Creek, South Dakota, the morning after the Wounded Knee Massacre of 29 December 1890. The massacre occurred after an attempt by the U.S. Army to disarm Lakota people that had fled to the Badlands, fearing a violent repression of followers of the growing ghost dance religion by the Army. The Lakota were surrounded by the 7th Cavalry when a gun was discharged by accident. The 7th Cavalry opened fire, killing up to 300 people, many of them women and children. This photo at the Crazy Horse Memorial is from a 1948 reunion of the survivors of the 1876 Battle of Little Bighorn. They would have fought alongside Chief Crazy Horse, a poignant reminder of the conflicts shaping American history. Samson Beaver, a respected member of the Stoney Nakoda First Nation, was photographed alongside his wife, Leah, and their daughter, Frances Louise, in 1907. This poignant image captures a moment of familial unity and resilience within a rapidly changing world. Photographer and cowhand Irwin E. Smith pouring himself some coffee. Open Range Ranch, Arizona, 1909. Hydraulic gold mining in a forested area in Oregon, 1890. A powerful water jet is being used to erode the hillside. A group of people stand near the edge of the excavation, observing the operation. The surrounding area is cleared of trees, reflecting the impact of mining on the environment. The lynching of American outlaw, Jim Miller, and local ranchers that contracted him, Jesse West, Joe Allen, Barry B. Burrell. Ada, Oklahoma, April 19, 1909. Jim Miller was famed for being a contracted killer, charging $150 per kill. He's reputed to have killed up to a dozen men, and allegedly Pat Garrett, who killed Billy the Kid. A Native American man gazing over the newly completed Transcontinental Railroad in Nevada, 1869. The winding river and towering cliffs highlight the vastness of the land, while the railroad below marks a turning point in American history, symbolizing progress, but also the encroachment on indigenous lands. The railroad still goes through this canyon now near Carlin, Nevada. Two brothers from West Virginia who fought on opposite sides of the American Civil War, posing in their Civil War uniforms, one Union and one Confederate, 1910. Jefferson Soapy Smith in a bar in Skagway, Alaska. Known as a notorious Wild West con artist, Soapy ran a network of scams and owned this saloon. Skagway in 1898 was at the height of the Klondike Gold Rush, attracting adventurers and people like Soapy, who profited by exploiting the newly arrived settlers. A family group sitting in the shade of a tree behind their covered wagon, which has a chuck box and working table arrangement at the rear. 3 Block Range, New Mexico, 1908. Somewhere east of Salem, Oregon, around 1890 to 1900. Big trees in the background, some of the trees already cut down, a picture before the robber barons cut down all the trees. It was said this place is all farmland now. Outside Dodge City, Kansas in the early 1900s, the Price family pose in front of their house. Bill Cope on the far left holds a puppy sitting on the bicycle seat. A man riding an elk in Sheridan, Wyoming, 1910. Elks are not commonly ridden on their back, but there are multiple examples from this time. People have been taming elk and reindeer to ride on their back and pull carriages and sleighs for a long time. Jackson's Bar in Idaho, 1890s. The bar owner posed with a rifle, both a tool for survival and a symbol of authority, reflecting the harsh realities of frontier life, where self-reliance was not just a virtue, but a necessity. It encapsulates the era's spirit. When saloons were more than watering holes, they were central hubs of social interaction and sometimes conflict resolution in small, gritty towns. Group portrait of Missouri Bushwhackers leaders Arch Clements, Dave Poole, and Bill Hendricks brandishing revolvers. The photo was taken in Sherman, Texas, 1860s. Studio portrait of a native woman with the marvelous name of Takes a Prisoner Blackbird from the Fort Belknap Reservation in Montana. 2 women in dresses standing in a dirt street, Cutler Street, Helena, Montana, 1885. View is looking west on Cutler Street toward the intersection with South Main Street and the Chinatown area of Helena. The intersection of Cutler and Water Street is just behind the women. Reeder's Alley at west end of Cutler. A member of the 10th U.S. Cavalry poses with 3 Lipan Apache Scouts, Fort Whipple, Arizona, circa 1885. The covered wagon of the Great Western Migration, 1886, in Loup Valley, Nebraska. A family poses with the wagon in which they live and travel daily during their pursuit of a homestead. A street in Creede, Colorado, 1892. Creede was the last great silver boom town of the 19th century. Although silver had been discovered here in the 1860s, it wasn't until 1889 that the boom hit. Within 2 years, the population had increased tenfold, with its mines operating all the way until 1985. Soapy Smith, Bob Ford, and Bat Masterson were all in Creede during the early 1890s. Orland Osgood Saloon in Carter County, Montana, 1905. Likely a cougar up there on the cabinet. A poster of actress Lily Langtry above on the wall. A wild bronc fighting off the riders in Ellis Ranch, Texas, 1907. Photographed by Irwin E. Smith. Wild Ben Raymond poses for this photograph in Leadville, Colorado, where he worked as a mine guard. He holds a first model open Top Merwin Holbert Frontier Army revolver in one hand and a Smith & Wesson No. 3 new model in his holster. He wears a Bowie knife around his neck. Although the arm is believed to have been a prop, it nonetheless shows the Merwin's presence in the Wild West. Studio portrait of Kauklea, an Alaskan Tlingit woman in her potlatch dance costume, 1906. Her face is painted and she wears a bone nose ring. On her head is a bear claw headdress. Her shirt is beaded and embroidered. Unidentified young Blackfoot man poses with shotgun in late 1880s. Satana, or Flying Chief, or Rainy Chief North Blood. Stuntman Earl Elwood Dobbins rode on a black horse on movie set of Santa Fe Trail, a 1941. He wears long sleeve coat and cowboy hat with right hand raised up with a gun. Thomas Orville Kilgore and the whole family is there for the portrait, including the kids, dog, and gun. Tennessee, 1909.